Hey guys, it's Amber. I'm sorry I'm not there to see your presentations. I'm sure they were all very informative, but here's my presentation on presidential support for the arts throughout American history. I hope you enjoy it.
Presidential support for the arts throughout history. Before I began researching which presidents of the United States gave a lot of support to the arts during their presidency, I wanted to take a look at the relationship between the arts and the government. Usually when you think of politics, the first thing to come to your mind is not art. It seems in the large scale of politics, and especially in a presidential campaigning, the arts always take a back seat behind healthcare, the economy, taxes, and education. However, like everything in the United States, the arts are hugely affected by politics, and therefore the two are forever connected. Although the arts would still survive without the support of the government, the monetary funding they provide helps the arts to thrive. 10% of support for the arts comes from the government. Of that, 2% is from the federal government. And in return, the nonprofit arts and culture industry generates $166.2 billion in economic activity every year. Many of our founding fathers and early presidents were huge supporters for the arts. Although this is true, when the United States government was being formed, we wanted the structure of our country to be completely unlike the European autocratic regimes. Therefore, the arts did not receive a permanent place in our Constitution. However, our first four presidents, George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison, all kept the arts as a major aspect in their personal lives and knew the importance of the arts to our culture. As John Adams says, "I must study politics and war, that my sons may have the liberty to study mathematics and philosophy, natural history, and naval architecture, in order to give their children a right to study poetry, music, architecture, tapestry, and porcelain." John Quincy Adams was a huge advocate for the arts. He brought many proposals for artistic learning systems and for the creation of a national university to Congress, but they were all turned down. He even stated in his State of the Union address that the arts advanced the cause of civilization. Although, unfortunately, basically everything he proposed as president was rejected, almost all of it would eventually come to fruition. Such things as a naval academy, a national astronomical laboratory, a system of weights and measures, and government aid to various intellectual and artistic endeavors. Theodore Roosevelt was one of the first presidents in almost 75 years to indicate strong support for the arts. He was known throughout the country for his energetic and loving personality, and he saw his position as president, like so many presidents before him, as an opportunity to operate a positive government on behalf of the people. Roosevelt was a great supporter of the arts and loved to surround himself by artists, and brought many to Washington to provide service and advice to him. During his presidency, Roosevelt issued executive order and created a Bureau of Fine Arts. The Bureau was designed to advise on the aesthetic of public buildings in Washington, D.C. However, the council only met once during his presidency, but issued such creations as the Mall and the Lincoln Memorial. When William Taft became president in 1909, he continued working on the Bureau of Fine Arts. He liked the idea of an art commission, but did not agree with Roosevelt's manner of establishing it by an executive order. Therefore, Taft abolished the commission Roosevelt created and created the Federal Commission of Fine Arts through an act of Congress. The commission was authorized by Congress in 1910. This commission focused not only on the aesthetic of public buildings, but also that all of the art created would be work of high quality. This commission was the first permanent federal initiative toward any of the arts. Franklin Roosevelt was the next president to contribute a lot of support to the arts. Through his creation of the New Deal, jobs were provided to thousands of unemployed workers in the United States. Although in the beginning artists were lumped together with all of the other unemployed workers, in 1935 Congress approved the Works Projects Administration, which included federal arts projects in writing, theater, painting, and music. These work projects provided income to thousands of artists for years. The programs also helped to expose mainstream America to all aspects of the arts. Through the 1940s and 1950s, art in the United States served as a form of propaganda. During the battle with the Soviet Union, art pieces were put into American embassies to advertise the greatness of the American culture to other nations. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, the lack of culture in America, and specifically Washington, D.C., was becoming a main concern for American citizens. Although there were many museums, there was a major lack of representation from the performing arts fields. Due to this, President Eisenhower created the National Center for the Performing Arts in Washington. This later became known as the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. President John F. Kennedy was another major advocate for the arts. During his presidency, he appointed a Presidential Advisory Council on the Arts. Through this council, the idea of a National Arts Foundation to administer grants to artists and arts organizations was created. Unfortunately, Kennedy did not live to see the Advisory Council established, but President Lyndon B. Johnson would ensure the creation of the National Endowment for the Arts. President Lyndon B. Johnson continued the work that President Kennedy began on a National Arts Foundation. In 1965, the National Endowment for the Arts was established. The NEA not only administered grants for artists and arts organizations, but also helped to bring the United States into a first-class status in terms of culture. The National Endowment for the Arts has succeeded in providing a great amount of support to artists and arts institutions. Out of the 10% of support the United States government gives to the arts, slightly less than 1% actually comes from the NEA. However, this number does not include the matching donations from other private donors or organizations given to art institutes supported by the NEA. Every dollar that the NEA gives in grants typically generates 7 to 8 times more money in terms of matching grants, further donations, and earned revenue. The NEA helps to legitimize a new organization and further validate an existing one. It has been many years since a president of the United States has shown major support for the arts throughout his term. The question now is, will Barack Obama start the next generation of art advocacy by presidents? In his presidential platform, President-elect Obama suggests that there needs to be an expansion of public-private partnerships between schools and arts organizations in order to help the growth of art education. Another idea he suggests is the creation of an artist corps where young artists would be trained to work in low-income schools and their communities. He says that as president, he will publicly champion the importance of arts education. Aside from art education, Obama also says that he will support increased funding for the NEA. He mentions that this will also help to promote economic development of countless communities in America. Promoting cultural diplomacy and attracting foreign talent are also things he mentions in his platform to help support the arts. To conclude this section of his platform, he mentions that he will work to provide health care to artists. He also supports the Artist Museum Partnership Act, which would allow artists to deduct the fair market value of their work instead of only the cost of materials when they make charitable contributions. Hopefully, President-elect Obama will work hard to make sure all of these things come to fruition.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. If you have any questions, just email me at this address.